name is Marcel Nelen. I work here as deputy head of the Genome Diagnostics department, and I'm also heading the core facility of the Radboudumc University Medical Center, core facility for DNA isolation, sequencing, and the analysis of the data. So the first machines, you will see a lot of robots in our department, especially in the facility. In total we have like 20 or so of these systems. Every robot more or less specialized. These are the two robots that we have for DNA isolation. Again, robots. So now we're in a next-gen sequencing facility. So this is where we prepare samples for our whole exome sequencing strategy, and probably in the near future we will prepare samples for whole genome sequencing strategies. This is for our in-house workflow, where we prepare samples from, let's say, to get a report out within 14 days. Traveling room, and here you see all the equipment that we have used over the past 20 years or so. Kind of an evolution in time, how next generation sequencing evolved. So these two machines here in the back are what we call Sanger sequencing machines. These machines were actually used to sequence the first human genome. We had hundreds of these machines spread out through the entire world. So there were sequencing machines in Cambridge, there were sequencing machines in Houston, there were sequencing machines in Beijing. They were all doing all their sequencing, usually one chromosome at a time. It took more than 10 years to sequence the whole genome. You can argue if it's still finished. But this was the machine that was used. It was actually more expensive to sequence the first human genome than to put a man on the moon. This is a system that essentially uses the same type of strategy. You chop up your DNA, you sequence roughly 150 bases, and you can do a whole genome in one day. Top of the line that we currently have, this is essentially the same machine as you have over there. The sequencing strategy is the same. The sequencing capacity is crazy more. One system can have 40 of those systems in this machine. So now you can do a genome per hour. The latest development that we have. These are 4 systems in place for long read sequencing. So all the other machines are short read sequencing, so you chop up the DNA in very small pieces. Here you want to have the pieces as long as possible. This is a sequencer that can do a whole genome, but still far more expensive than the short read genomes, but you get more information out of it. You can determine the paternal or maternal alleles in this sequencing, just one sequencing reaction. You cannot do this on a short read sequence because the reads are too short. You don't see the differences between the alleles. So these two are the main workhorses for exome sequencing. The other 4 long read sequences are just for sequencing developments and building up experience for that. If you ask me what's the future of sequencing, I think long read sequencing will eventually be the preferred sequencing technology. But it needs to step up with capacity and price. So you've seen most of the equipment that we have, not all the equipment, but very much the equipment that we use for our next-gen sequencing strategies and all our storage and DNA isolation machines you've seen. This is by far the most used equipment, and I think time will tell if these machines will evolve, but I'm sure we will have new systems within the next 2 or 3 years or so.